Now then, Craigo, I was reflecting earlier about our last conversation face to face, and it was when we met at the Hilton, St George's Park. So
Yeah,
was that the back end of last year or the start of this year before the ice race?
that was it was the start of this year, start of 2020 of all years, just before I went off to the Arctic.
That's right. Yeah, we were talking a lot about some of the key themes and concepts around obviously the way you approach these sort of ultra events, I call them, because you do more than sort of one type of race, don't you? And obviously over the last 48 hours, you've had a bit of a personal challenge yourself. Talk to us about that, because I want to set the scene for whoever stumbles across this video around what it is you did on Saturday through to Sunday.
Well, the opportunities came up to do. It was strange. I'd signed up for a race to help a friend, which is quite unique. It's a race that doesn't have a finish line, doesn't have any checkpoints. You basically have a start point. You set off from the centre of England, and you get as far as you can in 24 hours. So when I started to crunch the numbers, and I was thinking, right, if I can maintain a certain pace, I could do 100 miles, and in theory. So anyway, that actual race got cancelled, and they brought out a new race called Day Release, and it's like a prison break theme where you run from your home and you run out as far as you can and back within 24 hours. And I was still at this idea of 100 miles in my head, and when I started to look at it all, I thought maybe I can do 100 miles here, and there's two things there. There's two like pillars really of ultra running. One is 100 miler, is like, it's something that a lot of ultra runners aspire to one day, and it's certainly something I wanted to test myself against and try. And the other thing is to doing 100 miles is one thing, but doing 100 miles in 24 hours is a whole new challenge. Now, the other interesting aspect of this race was they measured the distance as the crow flies, which meant you need an extremely straight course, so there was loads of little different aspects of it. And so all in all, I completed 104 miles and 104.42 miles, which is just incredible. The interesting thing, scary thing, whichever way you want to pitch it, is that I think I can knock 2 hours off that. And or I can put an extra 15, 16 miles on it, which just blew my head. And I remember talking to you, like I said, same conversation, beginning of the year, and thinking, I don't know if I'm going to really ever put in a decent effort for an ultra again. I don't know. There's so many like unknowns, so many things that I was worried about and concerned about. And to be sat here now, talking to you, reflecting on the year, is just, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, because for me, from my angle of coming in and supporting you and the other guys we work with, it's so important to have those reflection moments in terms of not just looking back over the year and the conversations we've had in the past over the years actually, but reflecting on what's just happened. So where are you at right now? So you've just run over 100 miles in 24 hours, and if I remember rightly, it was like lunchtime to lunchtime, so it was through the night, to paint a picture. Is that right?
Yeah, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There was a couple of reasons why. There's a really famous ultra runner called Courtney Dauwalter, and female runner, just is just incredible. And she said a couple of things in a video that I watched recently, and it really stuck out in my mind. And one of them, she shouted, her husband was doing a race for once, and she was helping him out, and she shouted, "Make good choices." And it just sounded weird, because it's not like normal language, is it? Make good choices. You know what I mean? Make good decisions.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seemed weird, and it just stuck in my mind. And because it stuck in my mind, I was like thinking, right, is this a good choice? Is it a good, and I think I made a load of really good choices, because people watching this should know that I'm an average runner at best. I'm averagely consistent at best, I would say, in my training and all that kind of stuff. So I know there's some incredible elite runners out there that are constantly at it, but I'm not really like that. So to have done over 100 miles, it was huge achievement for me.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt, it'll be a massive achievement for anyone, for sure. And I think when you when you play down your talents, you're talking about your physical ability there, but I think you offset a lot of that regarding your mental approach, which I want to touch on later on. But going back to this ability to reflect on performance and that, we're 48 hours on. Where are you at from a sort of physical and psychological position right now? Where are you at?
I don't think I've ever been in such a good spot after an event. Like physically, you know, my feet are pretty battered, but they're good. They're going to be repaired in 2 or 3 days. You know, a couple of blisters and a few aches and pains and that kind of stuff. Just bruising, you know, after covering that kind of mileage. I mean, it's a long way. My wife came out to meet me halfway, and it took her an hour and a half to drive from home to the turnaround point, and that's driving, you know. So it's a long way. My muscle aches and everything are not too bad. Like, again, you know, I could probably manage a little trot today, certainly a walk or a short bike ride. Mentally, I've normally finished these events and I'm like, that's it, I've retired, no more, you know, no more running. I'm keen to get going again, you know, which again, when we had a conversation beginning of the year, a lot, I was questioning running and whether I enjoyed it anymore, and, you know, how to find enjoyment on it. So many times I turned up and, let's go back a bit. Before I even got to the start line, there's been so many times I've been chatting to you and I've called you and said, I'm underprepared, I'm not conditioned, I'm injured, I don't know how this is going to go. You know, this is the first time that I've ever been on the start line thinking, I've no injuries, and all right, I could have dropped a stone, you know, to be a bit of a better weight, but conditioning wise, I'm actually, you know, pretty much on target. So that was a big moment for me, just realizing that.
And how did that sort of lead into, you know, your psychological process during the run? What was the journey there? So you've arrived on the start line, you feel you're best prepared as you can. And I think, you know, you're not a natural lightweight runner like myself here. You know, you're not these, you know, 8-9 stone, and arguably you probably never would be.
Yeah.
But psychologically, your journey through that, what was that then? So you've arrived in a good place, and then how? Just break it down over the 24 hours for us.
Yeah, it was weird, this race, in that there's a couple of things that are naturally going to play in your mind psychologically. One is there's no prize. You know what I mean? I'm going to get a medal for running 45 miles as a crow flies, and I've run 104.42. The other thing is that on the results, I think I've run the furthest distance, but I'm third in the overall standing because my route wasn't as straight as someone else's. So there was no real skin in the game. I had no reason to do it, you know. I hadn't paid a particularly big amount of money to do it, and so I could have dropped out at any time, really, you know. I did think about that ahead of time, and I did put a bit of like accountability and transparency in there, by getting a couple of other people involved, and, you know, I thought, well, I've got to do something. If they're going to go to all this effort, then I've got to see this through. The other thing was that what makes it really hard is that you don't know how far to go. Like, you know, I wanted like a top 5 finish, maybe even a win for the actual race, and you don't know how far to go, because you don't know how far you know, there's people out there doing the race. You don't know how far they're going, how straight their route is, and all this kind of stuff. All you know is you've got to get out as far as you can and back in 24 hours. So mentally, there's a couple of things that I did. First of all, you know, we've talked before about the difference between, you know, like trying to will yourself through something and commitment. You know, I was truly committed to it, and it was getting done. And quite often I'd say to myself, it doesn't have to be fast and it doesn't have to be pretty. It's just got to be done. I've got to do every step, and we might as well get on with it. And then the other thing that I constantly was telling myself was that I was going to do a race out and a long walk back. Was kind of my race strategy. And I'd create a spreadsheet with all my little timings and all this kind of stuff, and what I would do at certain places, and everything went really well, do you want me to talk about some of the things that didn't go so well, and then kind of how we got around that?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, it'd be quite enlightening, I think.
Yeah, so the route, you'll know some of this route. Basically, from my home, I went past RAF Cosford base, and for the first sort of 15, 16 miles, it was on busy roads on a Saturday afternoon. It started to get dark. Big trucks sort of flying past you. You know, you've experienced this when you're cycling. It's quite hair raising, like, you know, when you're just a vulnerable body on the side of the road with however many tons of metal just flying past you at 60 mile an hour. So, you know, that kind of takes its toll. But a lot of that was either flat or downhill. So I could really kind of just get on with that and get that done. Now, when I first started, I was on for a 4-hour marathon. And I think back now and I'm like, you know, that's a ridiculous pace, really. But I was feeling strong, and the conditions were with me. Other than it was a bit misty, it was great. The temperature was good, and that wasn't a problem. It then had a stretch of about 20 miles on the Shropshire Union Canal, and I'd done a little bit of a recce on there a couple of weeks ago, and it was fine. But when I got there on sort of Saturday night, it was just like a quagmire. It was just so wet, muddy, greasy, and it really sort of took its toll. It was really, really slippy and really slowed me down. It was absolutely pitch black, and I had a head torch, but because of the mist and because of my breath, the light was just reflecting off the mist, and I could barely see. And at times, I was better just running in the dark. But then that made it really hard because I'm trying to keep my feet dry because I've got 80 odd miles to go or whatever. I'm trying to stay out the canals. I don't want to fall in. And that was quite a tough thing to get through. Really, it's quite a tough time. And you know, I did think about our conversations a lot of like, you know, what can you control? You know, and the thing that I could control was if I can get through in a decent time, then as soon as I get on the road, you know, I could probably recover a bit of time there. So all I need to do is just get through this stage. Once I kind of popped off the road, I started off with that sort of 4-hour rough marathon. I'd have a buffer of about 40 minutes. Now I lost that on the canal, and I was over time. It was about 10 minutes over the time. I managed to, I had a plan B. If the canal was shocking, then I had a plan B, and I could come off sort of 2 or 3 miles earlier and get on the road and try and make up a bit more time. I decided I was going to do that. And I had a great crew. I had two friends sort of helping me out. But on reflection, there's a couple of things that they did which just completely messed with my head. One was they weren't giving me accurate information. They were in an attempt to try and G me up and get me moving quicker or to make me feel better, whatever. They were telling me the distance was less than I was actually doing. And they was telling me that I needed to move faster than I was actually moving. So that, you know, they kind of really played on my mind a bit, you know, and kind of got me down a little bit. So I think if anybody's watching this and they help people in the future, you just got to be honest. You know what I mean? Just be honest so that the racer, the athlete or whatever can just make a decent decision and they kind of know where they are. Anyway, got on the road and I was about, I don't know, I was about 10 miles from my anticipated turnaround point. Now I wanted to get to my turnaround point, which is about 52 miles in 10 hours. That was kind of my own personal cutoff. And that would give me, you know, 14 hours to then have a long, more or less walk back. And it's quite obvious that I wasn't going to get to my turnaround point in 10 hours. I was going to probably hit it around 10 and a half, 10 hours 45. And I was really questioning whether I was going to get back in time. And obviously, if I don't get back in time, the race doesn't stand. Yes, I've covered the distance, but, you know, it really is for nothing then. So I phoned guy Andy that was manning the checkpoints, and he was like feeding me and giving me water and everything. And he was like, "Nah, you'll be fine. You know, where have you picked this 10 hours from? It's just, you know, it means nothing really. It's just your decision." I was like, "Well, it does mean something because, you know, with fatigue and, you know, and all that kind of stuff, I need to have a good 14 hours to get back really." And he said, "Look, just, you know, you kick yourself if you don't make it to the actual turnaround point." And he basically said, "You know, you're not turning around early, do it." So I put the phone down in a bit of a strop, and I was like, you know, I thought he'd have understood and all this, and he didn't. And anyway, I kept on going, and at this point the roads were really long, lights at the end of the road, and they just didn't seem to get any closer. And I was moving quite slow, and I could hear a car coming up along behind me. It really started to slow down. I thought, oh, and to top it off, I bet this is the police, and I bet I'm going to get bloody, you know, pulled over and all this. And I looked over to my left, and it was my wife and my son, and they brought a little puppy, Dottie, with them. And it just absolutely picked me up, and to the point where, you know, they were driving alongside me, and I was just trotting along, and it just helped me get through that low point. The circumstances can just completely change your mental, that way you are mentally, and also how you are physically, you know. So basically, I trotted all the way into the halfway point. I felt okay. I felt pretty fresh. Obviously tired, and legs were a bit battered and everything, but knew I had 50 odd miles to go to get home, and was ready for it. The turnaround was pretty, not a right lot to write home about, really. I mean, there weren't any mega disastrous moments or like events. There was a time when I was really feeling the pressure of time, you know, and that was kind of on the way back. I was halfway through the canal section again, and I couldn't work out. My maths isn't great anyway, especially on the run, having done 70 odd mile. My maths just wasn't working, and I'm trying to work out what pace I need to sustain in order to be able to get through, you know, and come in under the 24 hours. And I couldn't work it out. And I got to one of the checkpoints in the canal, and same again, I said to one of the guys that was helping me out, you know, how far is it? And how many what pace do I need to go out? How many minutes per mile or whatever? And he said, you've got 31 miles, and you could walk it at 3.5 miles an hour if you want. And I was like, I mean, that's almost a stroll. Anyway, luckily, I said to him, can you just send me a message with the distances from one leg to the next, just so I know what distances, so I can get my head around it. So he sent me the distances, and I went, well, that's not 31 miles. I told it up, and I'd done 4 miles before I got the text message, and it still totaled 38 miles. So I was 42 miles to go, and it told me it was 31, you know. So at that point, I was like, what the hell do I do, you know, now? I'd also taken a wrong turning. So on the way back from the turnaround point, there was a bit where my brother was kind of driving alongside me for a couple of minutes, and was chatting away, seeing how I was, doing a bit of filming with the GoPro. And I said, I don't recognize any of this road. Are you sure this is the right way? And he's like, yeah, keep going. Anyway, I then get a phone call from Andy, the other guy in the support crew, saying, you know, you're going the wrong way. And we went, you know, a couple of miles off route. I just had to get on with it. Like, you know, I couldn't turn around, you know, I had to kind of see it through. But yeah, pretty uneventful. And then towards the end, I'd lined up a couple of runners to run with me. One of the guys, because I was slightly behind time, he came and met me further up the canal, and he kind of ran with me for a lot longer, and that really helped. You know, he was kind of chatting away. I didn't really say a great deal, but you know, he just kept me moving. There was times when I would have walked, you know, if there'd not been anyone else there watching, I think, and he just kept me moving. My mantra became, if you want this bad enough, you'll make it happen. And that's just what I kept saying to myself, you know, and I was thinking, right, I need to run from this sign or from this lamppost or whatever. And I really, you know, I didn't want to, it was hurting, I was in a lot of pain, but I just kept saying to myself, if I want this bad enough, I'll make it happen. And it was almost like a character judgment in it, you know, because if I didn't run at that point, it's like, we obviously don't want it then. Well, I do want it, you know what I mean? So, and that's kind of how I kind of made my way through it. There was a couple of times when I got a little bit choked up when I was thinking about what was about to happen. I was getting towards the end, and as I was, when I got to Cosford, there was 4.2 miles to go, And I'd worked out that if I got there by 3 o'clock, that's an hour to do 4.2 miles, and I could do that really, really easy. And I got there at 2:30, so loads of time in the bag, and then it was just a long stroll all the way to the finish. And obviously, the finish wasn't immense because of social distance and all that, but I had I had a bit of family there. A couple of the guys that run with me were there, and it was enough to make it a special occasion. And just incredible that I'd done 104.42 miles in less than 24 hours, and it really was relatively uneventful. I mean, I spoke to you before about some of the other races, and there's been times when I've been close to slipping into a coma and all this kind of stuff, and it just wasn't anything like that. So,
and I think when you hold on to that last thought there, and you link into the fact of, all right, there's a bit of misinformation from your support crew, and yes, you took a wrong turn in, and yes, obviously there's a bit of flooding on some of the tow paths there. Actually, compared to some of the other challenges you've had to overcome, not just in your running career, but your professional career beforehand, it's negligible, isn't it? But in that moment, it's everything, isn't it? Because you're focused on your goal.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It can become completely engulfing, and I think when you add that to the fact that like I'm not running for some prize money here, there's no medal for doing 100 miles. There's nothing like that. There's just no reason to carry on. So, and when the wheels start to come off, you've got to find some reason to carry on. And lots of people, I kind of worked it out halfway through the race. A lot of people said to me, "Why are you doing it?" I was like, I don't really know. I just got it into my head that I was going to try and do 100 miles, and so I'm doing it. And lots of people, when they start doing big races like that, they go, "Oh, we'll see how it goes." And I wouldn't let myself say I'll see how it goes, because it's just the way I'm looking at it is like, well, if it don't work out, then I was only seeing how it goes anyway. I was doing it. I'm going to do this, whatever. And I'd said to myself that even if I'm way over time, I'm still going to do the 100 miles, because that's the target I've set. The under 24 hours is something else. But halfway through the race, it clicked on me why this race was so important to me. And I think it was because all the other the big races I've done before, I've been in the Sahara, the Amazon, in the Arctic and all that. And you're quite detached, and people track you and they follow you online and all this kind of stuff, but you're quite detached from your family. They don't really know what you're going through. They see when you come home and your feet are a bit battered and you've lost, a stone in weight or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. But they don't really understand it. They don't really experience it. But for this race, like, my wife was going to be at the finish line, which meant that she's going to see, she's going to see all this, and then she's going to see me when I finished it. She's going to have a real understanding of the time that's elapsed. Because she drove the route, she's going to have a real understanding of the distance that I've traveled. And I think that was like one of my big driving forces, was with people there that I really cared about, who's going to get to witness it, and going to get to see it. And I was fortunate that my oldest son, who works away, he was back as well, so he could kind of see it.
It makes it real, doesn't it? Because I think anybody can sit down and watch your videos. They're all over YouTube, and I'd encourage anybody listening to look back at some of Craig's videos. It's fantastic. But when you're there experiencing it and seeing it, how tired you are, how achy you are, how sore you are, that really brings it to life. And I really like that little message earlier around the lift you had from an external factor, which was obviously your wife Paula and your son, and even the puppy, when you needed it most. And I think there's a huge message there in terms of sometimes we can help and support people all the time, but sometimes they don't always need it. So, if somebody running alongside you for the first 10 miles, when you're running at a good pace yourself and you're comfortable and you're running off adrenaline because you're getting started, hence your 4-hour marathon, that's not needed. That's not when you need it. It's when you need it most. It's really important for people to be there.
Yeah. And like I said, and that coupled with honesty, even when I got to Costa at the end, I had 4 and a bit miles to go, and the guys on the support crew said, "Right, you've got 50 minutes." I was like, "What are you talking about, 50 minutes?" And I'd lost all trust in what they were saying at this point. I said, "What are you talking about, 50 minutes? It's 2:30. my deadline's 4 o'clock and I've got 4 miles. Where does 15 minutes? And they were just trying to get me to go faster, or
it's
I
quite
understand what they were doing.
It's really common, Craig. So, I mean, was it over 10 years ago now? I was a support crew for the Race Across America for a team of 4, where they were doing 3,000 miles on the bikes, and it was in 7 days was their target or something. It was like ridiculous. So 15, 16 mile an hour for 7 days. And we had like a crew chief, you know, who was allocated, and we had a plan, and the plan went out the window, as they always do within the first few hours. Things happen, you know.
Yeah.
And then other people start chirping up their ideas. And I do remember 2 people in the sport crew going, right, well, we need to make this time up, but don't tell them. Just, you know, tell them they're not going fast enough, or creep the distance, or lengthen the leg. And I was like, the last thing you do to an endurance athlete is start lying unless it's part of your plan. You know, if you haven't preset that up and gone, I don't care what it is, I just need to know what my target is. I think that sense of realism and that honesty is so important, because if somebody give you all those statistics when you were at your lowest ebb of that race, it could have broke you and it could have stopped you. You know, and it's on the verge of that happening, where it's actually, right, you are a little bit behind, but we've got a plan in place. So it's all that positive language we talk about, and this is how we're going to slowly creep it back. So, and you go, yeah, that feels right, because I'm not stupid. I've done the plan and I know exactly where I am, and this person's on my side.
Yeah, and other little things as well, which is just language. But I had a spreadsheet with, you know, this is the distance of the leg, this is my anticipated pace, this is what time I should get there. And obviously, when I first started, they were like, right, you're 40 minutes ahead, you know, you're 30 minutes ahead, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then I got to another checkpoint after the first leg of the canal, and they said, you're, what was the actual words they said? They said you're down 20 minutes. So in my head, I'm like, well, how have I lost an hour? Because I was up 40 minutes before. How have I lost an hour? And I said, what do you mean? You know, I'm down 20 minutes. What's that? And I'm looking at what time is it? What time was I supposed to be here and all this? And what they actually meant was, you've lost 20 minutes of your buffer. So I'm still ahead 20 minutes. You know, and it was just that little bit of clarity, and it wouldn't really matter on a day-to-day basis. But when you just turned out all your energy and ran your tank dry, you know, and you're not thinking straight anyway. There was a couple of points where my hearing just went, you know, just like, bing. I was like, I can't hear all.
There's probably those juggernauts going past you 100 miles an hour in the middle of the night.
Yeah, exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And
yeah, but it's quite common, and I think what, you know, to be fair as well to your support crew, I think I have seen it in the past where people try and do it, and their intention is to try and help and support you out and motivate you and make sure you're staying on target. But I think there's a lot to do about knowing your athlete there. You know, a little bit of work around what works best for people. But again, lesson learned moving forward. So talking about them, so every experience is another opportunity to learn some lessons. What was your top 3 takeaways from your experience over the weekend?
Top 3 takeaways. I think, you know, I've not even really thought about. I suppose a personal one is that, you know, much more capable than you would have yourself believe, and quite often it just does boil down to that commitment. You know, saying, you know, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to see how it goes. You know, I'm going to see this through. You know, like I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, I can save time there. I can save time there. You know, so some of the checkpoints was there much longer than I needed to be. If the canal was in better conditions, you know, there's just a load of, and I really think I could knock 2 hours off that. Or if you put it into distance, I could do an extra 15, you know, maybe looking at even 120, 125 miles in 24 hours. So, yeah, much more capable than you kind of think you are. But it's incredible how your take on your own abilities changed. You know, when we first met, I'd not long, I don't know if I'd just been to the Sahara or was just going, you're just going, yeah. And, you know, the times then I was like, oh, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it and all this kind of stuff. You know, to go and do that now, I don't think I'd really change my training now. I think I'd do a couple of sessions in a heat chamber and get your kit right, and then, you know, you're good. One big takeaway is that preparation and strategy, you know, and I did sort of strategize a lot. probably too much in isolation. I should have probably just, bounced it off a couple of people. What do you think? But, to have the spreadsheet with the distances, having done a recce of the different places, and what I would do is, there's a time when I come off the canal, right, I'm changing my socks, I'm changing my shoes, I'm changing, when I get on the canal, I've got a different bag in case, I get hurt. I've got some warm clothing in there and all this kind of stuff. And just those little bits of prep and having that strategy made a massive difference. I don't know how it would have gone down if I hadn't really thought about that kind of stuff. Other takeaways, I suppose, another one was I wish I could show you now, but I literally took big boxes of food, and I tried to take variations of liquid food, variations of solid food, variations of savory food, variations of sweet food, and actually the amount of calories I consumed was very, very slim. I didn't really eat a great deal at all. Lots of drinking, lots of like hydration salts and that kind of stuff, but not a lot of food really. And so it was, just in that respect, it was good to have it, but I didn't need it, and I could definitely keep it simple, keep it a lot more simple.
Was you were talking about the mist as well, and it has been really sort of nice and cold and cool, hasn't it? But the mist, in terms of visibility and tricks on your mind, that must have been difficult. So if you were to do it again and try and beat your record, and because you've set a personal benchmark now, haven't you? Do you think you'd pick a different time of year, maybe with longer sun hours, or is there a plan in place?
Yeah, I didn't mind the night. I didn't mind the dark. When you're running, it can become a bit of a lonely place because all you've got is this beam of light in front of you. But on the same token, I quite like my own space, my own time, and to be with my own thoughts, even if they're really crap at the time. So yeah, I think definitely a different time of year to firm up the ground, and that would have made a massive difference. Then in some respects, as that got a counter argument in that it would be much warmer, so therefore you need more water. The ground would have definitely made a big difference.
Yeah, definitely, and then loads of room for improvement. So we've had a quick sort of hot debrief there, reflection on it's only 48 hours since it happened, and no doubt you'll have plenty more sort of light bulb moments over the next few days and weeks of whatever you're planning to do next, and what you could do differently if you were to challenge your benchmark, which knowing you most definitely will be. You've probably got an idea roughly in the back of your mind already. So what's next then, Craig? So what are you thinking? Is it time off for Christmas, put your feet up, get the business up and running again, or is it just pipe and slippers doing nothing?
Yeah, lots going on with work and business, the usual stuff, especially because we're about to reopen again after lockdown. So that's quite busy. Physically, I don't know about December. I've got a couple of people that are asking me or encouraging me to get involved in their like December virtual challenges and all this kind of stuff, but nothing mega. I've got some challenges lined up for next year, including a summit at Mont Blanc, another trip out to Kenya to do a big multi-day ultra out there, and a couple of other things that I'd like to do. Again, closer to home, there's a race that goes from the source of the River Severn all the way to the sea, and it passes my old house, that was on the river there, and I'd quite like to do that because again, it's right on the doorstep. It's in the UK, and then I've also got an aspiration to run the full length of the UK. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do that next year or the year after or whatever. But yeah, a couple of things. But I don't think I can ever really turn it off.
How bizarre is that though? Because our conversation in January was you were talking about you couldn't turn it on. No, you can't turn it
incredible.
off.
Well, and it's a great little sort of afterthought in that, every little bit of crap terrain on the canal or the hill or going wrong or whatever, or niggling your knee, constantly saying, this too will pass, you know what I mean? And knowing that it's going to go. There was a time when, I vomited a couple of times and I was like, yeah, fair enough. I know what that is. It's just a bit of exhaustion and I'm working a bit too hard and it'll pass, So, yeah, that was definitely something that played a big part.
Well, just from a little bit of feedback from external people, a few of my sort of friends and family are asking, what's Craig up to now? Why is he doing that? And I always give the same answer, because he wants to and he can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I have got an answer for you, well, which I'll give you. I'll tell you now. So obviously, you know, if you haven't listened to my podcast with Phil previously, go and listen to it. But you know, obviously when I came out of Marines, I fell on hard times and I ended up doing time in prison. And this was a prison break themed race. And it ended up where the guy that was running me was an ex-copper. So it ended up with me, an ex-con, being chased by an ex-copper on a race called Day Release. And I just thought that was so ironic. It was just worth doing, you know. So yeah, that was the exclusive.
There's a little book PDF. So there's a story in there, mate.
I've not shared that with anybody. I just, you know, I just thought it was so ironic at the time. But
brilliant.
Yeah.
And what a great way to wrap it up. Well, thanks, Craig. Thanks, great chat to you as always. And obviously we'll hopefully catch up before Christmas, if not early into the new year, COVID dependent as always. And we'll start putting some plans in place for your big events for next year. It's great to see you've got such ambitious goals, which probably after the experience you've put yourself through the last 48 hours, maybe are not so ambitious now. Now you know that that's such a good, strong person you are. So if you've stumbled across this on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, guys, we in the comments we'll stick all the links to myself and Craig. So Craig at getcraigwilliams.com, and also Team Bootcamp, and also I'm Phil Kelly from an organization called Pro Noctis. So go and have a look around our websites. Got some great content on there. We've both got podcasts, we've both got webinars, we've got some loads of stuff, blogs, all talking around our personal journeys, our organizational plans, and mindset and performance. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers now.
Thanks, Phil.